If you wanted to be on the Lake Shore Road in August of 2000, you may be too late because, boy, we're on the last day. August 31st, 2000, Lake Shore Road, Chazy. Just an absolutely beautiful day and a beautiful spot with hopefully some beautiful information about area history and the whole 9 yards. Calvin set this program up for us today to come out here, and he picked a great day. If you listen to the sounds in the background, man, we got creatures, we got we got everything going for us. We got Lake Champlain about 300 feet away. We got a historic monument, and we got a guy who's not as old as me, but he's working on it. Clarence, how are you?
I'm pretty good this morning.
Clarence,
I think I'm older than you are.
Oh
really.
my God. We have to get into that. We're both doing pretty good for the shape we're in. Clarence Baker from what he calls Baker's Acres. I knew of one Baker's Acres in Saranac, but you may take the cake here because you got your whole cotton picking family around you up here on the Lake Shore Road.
Not the whole family, but we have my mom here in the brick house. And
What's your mom's name?
Daisy
Daisy?
Baker.
Yep.
Yes.
That's a great old house.
And that house was built in 1850. And it's been in our family since the 1860s.
Wow, Civil War time.
As far as I know, I'm the 5th generation here. And we're up to the 7th generation with my grandchildren.
I love it. Back there's your daughter, Michelle.
That's my daughter, Michelle, who you know. And that house over there is mine, with the barn behind. This is my second son, David, over here. And then I don't think we can quite see it from here, but down at the lake is my oldest son, James. We have 2 more children. One lives in Altona, my daughter Mary, and the other one, Lauren, escaped to Orlando, Florida about 6 years ago.
We all like to do that every now and again. Some of us just don't come back.
We have somebody to visit now.
That sounds like a plan. Did you always hope to be surrounded by your family here, Clarence, or did that just work out that way?
I had no idea this was going to happen. I was in the Air Force for 20 years, and I thought with my children seeing other places that they would probably move on as they got older, but as you can see, they didn't, with the exception of one. And so here we are.
But you know what? A lot of people who moved away from here years ago wish they could be in a situation like you are here. Holy mackerel, just take a look around us.
I know.
Is there a more beautiful spot on the face of the earth? I don't know where it might be.
It's beautiful here.
It's a great spot. This is historical for a lot of reasons. First of all, you saw the sign. 1763 home site, sign of Jean Laframboise, first settler in Clinton County, driven out by Burgoyne 1777, returned 1783.
By the way, his cabin was located right over here.
Let me walk with you. Calvin will try to keep up with us as we go.
As I've plowed this garden through the years, I've pulled up a lot of stones with lime mortar on them. And so we figure the cabin was right in this location right here. And some of the stones are probably thrown over that bank, if you want to know the truth.
Look at the size of that melon. Wait a minute. Look at these melons. I never had melons that big.
You have to talk to the green thumb in the house there.
That's your mom, huh?
My mom's garden here.
Beautiful stuff. And her tomatoes aren't any redder than mine are.
No, well, she's had a few. She's had a few,
I've had
yes.
about 3. I like to have at least one for supper at night, so I tell my wife to put the hex on them and get them red by the time I get home. So his cabin was right about here.
Right here, as far as we know. Yeah.
And I don't know much else about him except for that sign, because I hadn't read about him till we got here today.
Well, he was the first settler, and of course he was a hunter and a trapper. I found out a few years ago, and kind of doing a little research on the family tree on the Baker side, that he had 2 brothers working for him. They were the Boulanger brothers. Boulanger is translated to baker. So,
Is it really? I learned that too. I didn't know that.
and our name was translated to Baker, and apparently, as far as we can figure, we're probably descendants of one of those 2 brothers. And this came to me by way of a woman in Indiana who was tracing her family tree.
Isn't that the way it always
Yeah.
works? Somebody thousands of miles away.
And so we can only assume at this point until I do some more research. But it's ironic if it were true that far back some of my descendants were right here.
That would be just absolutely terrific. You never done any.
But the other ironic thing is this did not come to us from that side of the family. It came from the other side of the family, my mother's family.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
Truly amazing. You've never done any actual archaeological digging here. You've been digging the garden and dug stuff up, but you never searched for stuff, did you?
There was an archaeological dig here done by the college while I was in the Air Force, and I was away. And all I know is they came and they dug some holes here, there, and all over, and then filled them in. I don't have much more information on it. Unfortunately, I believe my mother was so busy at the time taking care of her mother that she didn't have a chance to, really get involved in it.
This would have been at least, 25 years ago, maybe?
More than 25.
More than 25 years ago.
Yeah.
So it's possible if we call our good friend Wayne Miller at Special Collections at the Feinberg Library. Well, I call him a troublemaker, but actually he helps us out so much because he's such a good friend. He might check into the archives and see if there are any results of that archaeological dig, and we'd like to give them to you because it's a part of what you're doing up here.
I would sure like that.
Well, mark that down in your mind. I'll forget it 12 minutes after we leave here today, but Calvin remembers that stuff. That's kind of neat. As you can picture a log cabin sitting here more than 200 years ago, right? That would have been?
Yes. 63 or before then. That's when there used to be a little Catholic church side of the cemetery down here.
That's the Trombley Cemetery down the road, right?
Yes. There was a church there, and I understand that Jean Lafamboise and the priest had a little row.
Oh, they did, huh?
Yeah.
Oh,
And
my.
that's in the history of Chazy. Apparently, Lafamboise promised the priest some of his produce, and he never gave it to him, and the priest was pretty upset with him.
Isn't that interesting? Little pieces of history all over the place. Before we start walking toward this great collection of old tractors and talk about gas engines and old cars and all the things we want to talk about on our program today, I want a little bit about your history. Were you born here in this area?
I was born 1 3/10 miles north of here.
In
a home. The last owner of the house was Paul Sanger, but it's right here. It was the garden cottage to the Seymour estate. My dad was their caretaker in those days.
No kidding.
I was born in 1936.
You are a little older than I am. Just a little bit, about that much. He wasn't kidding.
And then my wife was born 1 3/10 miles to the south of here.
You can claim the whole area in between then if you
So,
want to.
yeah. And so we're home. We're home. Although we were away from here for a number of years, we're surely home now.
Well, today is an anniversary, and I want to mark that. August 31st, 2000. How many years out of the Air Force?
25.
Wow.
Yes. Yeah.
That took you, you joined the Air Force what year?
August 12th, 1955, I joined the Air Force.
Did you
Yeah.
really? That's just a couple of months after I graduated from high school.
Is it? Yeah.
The old Moira High School. So where did those 20 years take you? All over the place, huh?
Well, it took me first I took basic training at Geneva, New York, and then I was sent to Denver, Colorado. Remember that, you're going to hear it a lot. I was sent to Denver, Colorado to a technical school, then to Alconbury, England, then to Albuquerque, New Mexico, then Bitburg, Germany, to Denver, Colorado, to Simbach, Germany, to Denver, Colorado, to Udorn, Thailand,
What you mean?
to Udorn, Thailand, and then from there to Plattsburgh Air Base, and I did my last 4 years right here.
Did you?
Yes.
Finally came back home.
Yeah.
I won't ask you what you felt like when the base closed. Wasn't that that was a tough time for me.
It was a tough time for me, too. We miss it. We miss the base and the facilities and so forth. And
All the people we met here over the years.
yeah, and some of the people that I knew and would run into, they've left the area. There's a lot of the retired GIs, we don't notice it, but they've left the area. And we're not going to leave naturally. This is home, but
This is I don't know of anybody that's got their roots down deeper underneath this old log cabin and all over the place than the Baker family up on this end of the world. This is a beautiful spot here. Okay, after the Air Force, what happened for you?
Well, I went back to school. I went 1 year to Clinton Community College, got a 2-year degree out of there. Then I went to Plattsburgh State and for 2 more years and got a degree in accounting. Worked for New York State for a couple of years as an auditor, did prisons and Division for Youth Facilities. And then I decided I didn't want the road anymore. I went to work for ARC as their business manager. Worked there for 2 years and then went to work for Clinton County in the treasurer's office as county finance manager. I later became deputy treasurer and later became budget officer also. And I retired from there in 1993.
And that amazed me. It doesn't seem like you've been gone for 7 years, but then it doesn't seem like I've been out of the radio business for 3 years. So time flies when you're having fun,
I
right?
guess so, yeah.
Well, you had a good long tenure with the county then, didn't you?
I was there for 11 years, yeah. And I was ready to leave at the end. I kind of burned out.
That can happen, you know.
Yeah, and I was ready to do some of the things I always wanted to do in my life.
You worked for more than one treasurer? Who was the treasurer when you started?
Roy McGee was treasurer when I started. I think he was there. Yes, he was re-elected while I was there, and then Janet Dupree, I think that was about 1986, she took over, and of course she's still there. So.
Well, that's good. Sometimes we just like to go down the road and see where we've been and know how we got here, but you're apparently in good health and enjoying it. Do you do anything besides just work on engines and cars and things, or do you just take life easy over here?
Well, I do a lot of different things. I'm involved in this gas engine and tractor club. Of course, I have my hobby. I have my mother's place to take care of and my place to take care of, and my children seem to find things for me to do from time to time.
Isn't that the way it is?
My neighbor gets me involved in putting up handicap ramps from time to time. I do any number of things.
But it sounds like life is good.
Life is good right now. I hope it stays that way for a while.
It's really good. Let's get into the gas engine thing. How did you get started on this?
Well, I didn't get started with gas engines. I got started with tractors. This used to be a farm here. We used to be farmers. In fact, we have the first tractor down here. I'll show it to you in a little while. That my dad ever had. He bought it when I was 12 years old, and I've been driving it ever since. I decided, about 1989, I believe it was, to refurbish that one just because it was starting to look bad and I liked the old thing. So I reworked that one and found out that you can't do just one. It's like potato chips. You can't have just one. And so, as you can see, I have 8 now that I kept. And that's how I got started in that. Then, after joining this club and looking at all the old gas engines and wondering how they worked and so forth, I now own a couple of those also that I play with.
That's got to be fun.
It is. It's a lot of fun.
Is it quite a large group?
I think our club probably has a couple hundred members. Not all active. A lot of people live away from here. They come to our shows and so forth. Probably active in our club is probably the nucleus is 30 people, like most clubs. And it's a very nice club. It's a lot of just plain ordinary people. They don't expect anything out of you. They don't demand anything out of you. They just take you for who you are.
Sounds like a great hobby, too.
It is. It is a great hobby. You get to talk to people all over the place. I've made some good friends. I placed an ad one time in a paper for some information on an Avery tractor, which is one I have over there. Some folks from Missouri. The lady answered the ad with some information for me because they had some in their collection. They've been here twice to visit us. We've been there to visit them. We correspond now. Yeah. Another fellow, fellow that I think an awful lot of, that lives down in Lewis, New York. We became friends through the club. I had a tractor that wasn't running right, and he's an old mechanic. And he started helping with his tractor for no apparent reason. And he has a history that is very interesting. He's an old World War II veteran. He was POW of the Germans for 2.5 years, and he's quite a man. And we've become very good friends. So there's a lot of things about this club that I really enjoy.
The mutual interest of
Yes.
people with who do the same kind of thing. And, now that I heard we were coming here today, I look around and there are a number of people in the Tri-County region up here who collect old tractors.
Oh, yes.
Some only one kind, like your friend over here on Route 9 who has how many John Deere strung down
Wow,
through his
he's
field?
70-some, I believe.
That's amazing.
And as a matter of fact, I'm going to tip you off to another collection that's almost as large and probably nicer. It's almost right next door to him that nobody seems to know about.
Really?
Yeah. I'll tell you about it later, and then we can contact him and see if he wants to be
Here we go.
I mentioned it to him the other day. I think you'll have a chance to go and interview them, and he has some really rare, all green, all John Deere. Yeah.
Isn't that neat? Well, what do you say we walk over here and we can talk as we walk? Calvin and I got used to that going through Ausable Chasm a few weeks ago. The ups and downs of the trails around Ausable Chasm, but that was an awful lot of fun.
You know, I hate to admit it, but my wife and I on our very first date was supposed to go to Ausable Chasm. It didn't work out. And you know, we've never been.
Isn't that amazing?
We've never been to
Calvin and I mentioned that over and over again, how many people have lived here. I lived here, I can't remember how long before I went through Ausable Chasm. As I said in our interview there, we camped at the KOA right nearby for a few years, starting in the late 80s, and so we went through often. That was one of the perks for camping there was free trips through the chasm, so we took all of our friends through the chasm. And it's still a kick for me to go through, so you would enjoy it. It's an easy walk, and you'd love it sometime. Now you got to get in if you don't mind getting your feet wet, you get in one of those rubber rafts now. They don't have the wooden boats anymore.
Oh, I see.
Because in '96 the floods just ripped everything out. All right, this is a tractor that anybody who's ever been near a farm is familiar with. International Harvesters Farm Alls, the
Right.
Farm All Cub, one of the most famous tractors ever made. That's a dandy.
That's the smallest one they made, as far as I know. That's a 1948.
Is it really?
Yeah, that's the last one. I just finished that this spring.
Oh, it is absolutely gorgeous.
And it belonged to an old fellow down in Fultonville, New York, who raised roses commercially. And he mowed the grass around the rose beds. He had a plow for it, a cultivator, which I have. And I think that's all he ever did with the tractor. He aged out of doing the work, so he traded that in for a Cub Cadet lawnmower, and that's how I came by it.
Did he? Oh, you had to get the mower somewhere else then.
No,
right?
the mower came with it.
The mower came with it. Well, I'm just going to walk over here and take a look at it, because these kinds of things are delicious for me because they're remnants of my childhood.
Yeah,
You know, I was 11 years old when this tractor was made, and you were about 12. And how many hours would you put into a project like this?
Oh, conservatively, I have a couple hundred hours in it.
No kidding.
Yes.
You try to get them all running.
Oh, yes, they all run, and they. You want to hear it run?
Oh, sure. Crank that baby up. I saw a crank hole in the front. I thought he was going to ask me to crank it for a minute.
No.
I remember how to do that because I've cranked a lot of cars in my lifetime. But
It's turned off right now. So
that's all right.
just a second here.
Take your time. Isn't this just as neat as it can
We
be?
have to take the can.
Oh, got to take that. He even painted the can on the smokestack. That's amazing. Yeah, get it out of gear. We don't want to
That's
get.
international red.
Yes, of course it is. Oh, he does have the crank right there. Huh? Look at that. Didn't even turn over 6 times. Look at that. You weren't kidding, aren't you? Isn't that a beautiful sound?
That's a little sweetheart right there.
Did it run when you got it?
No, it didn't. No, it didn't.
Didn't run at all. So you had to really do some work. You had to become a real mechanic, didn't you? Were you
Well,
interested in motors before that, or?
I've always been interested in mechanical stuff. I grew up on a farm. You always had something to fix. I was in a somewhat mechanical field in the Air Force, electronic and mechanical, and I fooled around with cars throughout the years. When I still understood them, now I'm scared to look under the hood.
Yeah, you and me the same way.
So
Oh, that's beautiful. That's absolutely beautiful. Boy, it not only runs, but it purrs. Did you have to get new tires?
no, really, that rubber came with it.
You
Somebody
gotta
had
be kidding.
replaced the rubber on it, and the nicest thing is they replaced it with original rubber. Those are the same tires that came with it. Most tractors, they have new tires. Well, naturally they're not the original equipment, but for some reason these are.
Do you try to maintain that original equipment thing
As much
throughout
as
as
possible.
much
As
as
much as
possible?
possible, yes. I certainly do.
Do you have to? How do you get parts? Do you have to get on the internet, or do you just
Well,
scout around with friends? Or
There's a lot of different ways. You'd be surprised what Jack Dragoon still has for this tractor right there on the shelf where it can order. There's a lot of places. This is a big hobby, and there's a lot of publications out there, magazines and so forth, full of advertisements of people who are making replica parts or have original parts. You can get almost anything you want. And
that's great. Now, do you are you on a computer? Are you able to?
I'm not on a computer now because I used to get the catalogs and do it that way. But now everybody's giving you a website. My son has a computer, I can get on his. But I've promised myself during the winter months I'm going to have my own.
I love it. Well, you know, we all have
away
to.
from a computer when I left work, and I didn't think I ever wanted to touch one again, but I'm getting so I know I've got to modernize here.
So much fun to do research for people. Somebody, I did tell Calvin this. Okay, take your time. I don't mean to digress, but a friend of mine was talking about somebody who came to visit the Rouse's Point area in the 1940s, and he said he was a French painter, and he gave me a name that was spelled incorrectly. Said the man stayed there for the duration of the war and brought his daughter Margaret with him, on and on and on, and drew a picture of a cow in their field, and he still had the picture. And I said, well, I want to see the picture, but I want to check on the guy. So in 5 minutes' time, I was able to get the whole life history of this French painter who was exiled from France, and a lot of painters left Europe because of the war back in those days. And this guy especially wanted to get out of town because he helped develop a special camouflage. And he and his other painter buddies were camouflaging all kinds of stuff around Paris so it wouldn't get bombed. So I got about a ream of information about that thick about this guy who lived in the Rouse's Point area through the entire war period and then left. And unfortunately, most of the information on the internet about him fails to mention Rouse's Point, Champlain. They talk about New York City and Manhattan and other states of the Union where these painters came. So maybe we can change that little bit of history every now and again. Let people know about this painter, and that may be the subject of a future Our Little Corner. Who knows if we could find some of his relatives. All right, next. Oh boy, this is a beauty.
This one's the same age as I am. That's a 1936 John Deere B.
Oh my, look, wait a minute, look up here. Look up here. Is this kind of neat?
Yeah. There's several of them I have the toy version of also. That's not quite the same, but it's close enough to.
Pretty darn close. All right, give me some more history about this one.
This one, I bought sight unseen from Wellman, Iowa, and it came in by tractor trailer with a couple that Tony Trombley had bought and a couple that the Dupreys had bought. I have a picture that I'll share with you later of what a mess it was. It was really a mistake to buy it.
Was it really?
No,
but you never give up, and so
wasn't
you
a-
stuck with it.
It was a real mess. I've had a lot of heartache over this tractor. It runs
Have
real
you
fine.
really?
Headaches and heartaches.
Just couldn't get parts, you mean? Or
No, everything was wrong with it. Everything you can imagine was wrong with this tractor. It was, I think, in a junkyard, and guy said, well, he's in New York, I'm in Iowa, I'll sell it to him.
oh boy, that works.
Yeah.
That's the way it works sometimes.
But anyway, after a lot of work and headaches and heartaches, as I say, it's a nice running old tractor now.
Some of them you have to tear right down to almost the last bolt. Don't
This one has been. This one's been all
engines
apart.
sometimes are set up.
This engine's been down twice because,
really?
yeah, the first time we tore it apart, we had the head repaired, had it all back together, looking pretty. Tried to start it, it wouldn't start, so we belted it to another tractor from pulley to pulley, and started turning it over. And I knew I'd lost when water started coming out of the exhaust pipe.
Oh yeah, that'll do it.
Big crack in the head that they couldn't be repaired, so we had to. I went to, I think, Minnesota or somewhere like that, and found another head. The guy had one. He had it all checked out and sent to me. It was a good one.
So you lucked out on that score.
So, and honest to goodness, I just got this thing running the way I wanted it to run about 2 or 3 weeks ago.
No kidding.
Yeah, finally got the magneto rebuilt on it, and had to send that off to Iowa to get rebuilt, and now it's running.
So you've had this one for how long?
I think I completed the initial part of that in '91. Yeah, that's one of the first ones I did. Well, that was right after, that was the second tractor I did. Because after I did the old family tractor, I did this one next. And it should have made me stop. It really should have.
You did not. Now, people know you too well. You're not going to give up on You're not going to just park that out in the field and not have it run. There are a lot of John Deeres around the North Country. I don't know why. A lot of people bought John Deeres over the years, and so there are parts around, and there are tractors in fields.
The John Deere dealer of years ago was a very aggressive person. My dad was buying a farmall when that John Deere down there that I'll show you appeared in our yard. He just delivered it. He says, you better try that first. I think you'll like it.
Aggressive.
And it never left.
That's aggressive.
That fall, my dad didn't have plows for it. A set of plows appeared in the yard. Their dad argued with the truck driver that they weren't supposed to go there, and he says, I was told to deliver them here. I'm leaving them here. They never went back. And it was Bill Finney.
Oh, of course. Who else would it be?
Yes. And he.
Maybe he's the one that sold that tractor in your father's yard, Calvin.
I'm sure he is. I'm sure he is, yes.
What year is that one, Cal?
That's 48.
Is it really?
Yeah.
Oh,
That's
my.
your father's old tractor, right? Yeah.
Well, wow, I'm going to stop here just for a second for you to tell that story. Our viewers probably don't know it. Take the microphone.
Okay, well, years ago when Bob Venn and I were doing a story at Tony Trombley's, who we alluded to earlier, who has all those tractors up in Ingraham area on Route 9, came across a John Deere B in his collection. And, of course, a John Deere B is a John Deere B, but this one looked awfully familiar. So maybe a few months later, or maybe a year later, and I can't remember exact chronology of all this, but we did a story with Lyles Trombley, Tony's father, Gary Finney, Bob Venn, and my father on the old John Deere days, which I'm sure Clarence remembers very well, at W.W. Finney's. And after we finished there, we stopped in and looked at that tractor, and my father knew what happened to it after he traded it into Dragoons, where it had gone, and sure enough, that was his old tractor. And then maybe about 3 years ago, I twisted Tony and Marcia's arms, and they agreed to sell it back to us. So it's sitting in my father's yard.
Isn't that had to be amazing when that tractor was delivered that day. That had to be a glorious homecoming. Isn't that a great story?
I guess so. I knew the story. I'd heard it before. Another offshoot of that particular program, of John Deere days, is there was a picture that was flashed that contained the image of Warren Beggs and Frank Harvey, who were very good friends. Both lived on the Rata Road. And, of course, the father of a very dear friend of mine, Gerald Beggs. Well, Gerald saw that. And then they got a hold of Gary Finney. They found the picture. And now they've had the picture blown up and separated. And anyway, there's a picture on Gerald Biggs's wall now of that John Deere photo, and it's the perfect picture of his father. And then I believe he had another one made and gave it to Charlie Harvey because it was a picture of his father. So
great?
see what you do sometimes, and you don't even know it happens.
I love it. All right. Let's move over to the Avery, which is the one you mentioned before. And this is not I'm going to move over next to you and let Calvin get over here. This is not a brand of tractor that I'm familiar with at all.
It's not a brand of tractor that many people are familiar with. I'm very happy to have this tractor. I found it. Well, I didn't find it. Francis Bushy found it, who's my neighbor, and we'll be looking at some of his stuff later. He found it on the turnpike in a garage sale.
You gotta be kidding me.
And he came and he says, I don't know if you're interested, but there's an Alice Chalmers for sale on the turnpike. Because this was painted Alice Chalmers Persian orange. And there's a reason for that, because the primer on these tractors, and it's a common mistake to see an orange one, people scrape down, they find the primer, not the paint. They see that the primer was orange. They dipped everything, so they figured the tractor was orange, so they painted orange. And this was as orange as could be. I had to take that all off. This is the tractor that I placed an ad in the paper, desperately seeking information on it. And I got a lot of answers from a lot of places and developed that one friendship. I'm going to make a plea right now.
Okay.
This tractor was originally, supposedly, in Scioto. If there's anybody out there that watches this program that knows anything about this tractor, I'm in the phone book. Please call me, because I don't know any history on this tractor.
No kidding. Most of the time you can trace them back, like you can trace a lot of things back, but every now and again it just eludes you, huh?
These tractors were sold by Montgomery Ward, and you could order them in the catalog.
You know, now you're things are starting to click in my head. Remember, I was talking to my son Dale the other night. We were talking about cars, and I said, do you ever remember the Henry J? And he says, yeah. And I said, I think you could order those through the catalog.
But you'd order them from Sears Roebuck.
From Sears, yeah.
My aunt had one, and they were in Allstate. They were in Allstate, yes. Yes, my aunt over in Maine had one. These tractors, because they were sold by Montgomery Ward, and Montgomery Ward used to sell tires, they always came with Ward's tires. Of course, you can't get them anymore, and these are not Ward's tires. I wish they were, because it makes the tractor quite valuable if you have the Ward's tires still.
Well, there might be some of those around somewhere.
Well, I know where there's one, but I need two.
So anyway, this was not easy to get this going then, right?
This was running. In fact, the guy had done a complete motor job on it. It was running great, but it was the wrong color and so forth. And here, instead of this tuna fish can that I have modified to be a breather.
My gosh, look at that.
Someday I'll find a real one. This had a big sink gooseneck here, chromed. And he had a lot of little gizmos and gadgets on it. He had a plow on it for a four-wheeler. So I stripped a lot of the stuff off, tried to get it back to as authentic as possible.
So what year are we talking about now?
This is a 1948.
Okay, because you know you have serial numbers and everything here. It should be easy, very easy to trace all
Once
that
I found
stuff.
out where they put the serial number on these things, it took me forever to find out where you could find the serial number. That's not a real... And that was covered with paint, so it took me a while to find it.
There were little four-cylinder engines like many of them were.
This company made farm equipment for years. Well, years and years. They were in business over 100 years. They were in Louisville, Kentucky. They used to make equipment for Cletrac Corporation. Going into World War II, the Cletrac had a row crop tractor called the General. They also had tracked vehicles. Well, during World War II, they made tracked vehicles for the service, for the war effort. And after World War II, they decided to stay with tracked vehicles, Cletrac. This left B.F. Avery with all kinds of equipment with no tractor to hang it on. So he bought the rights to the General from Cletrac, and he started producing the General, and then there was the demand for the one-plow tractor back then, so he started making these. And if you research it, that's a Hercules engine. That's in forklifts. That's in a lot of different things. Out west, they're in a lot of the oil rig pumps. So the parts for that are real easy to come by. Almost everything here is also on some other tractor. This whole rear end was made by Clark Forklift Company, and there's a Massey Harris pony down there that has the same whole rear end in it.
No kidding.
Yeah, so these wheels are the same wheels that are on a Cub Farmall. So they were ordered off the shelf someplace.
Oh, golly.
But there's very few of these around. In fact, I only know there's an Avery Club, and I believe there's only one other registered with the club in New York State.
Oh, really? That's a rather exclusive club, I would say, if there's only one other tractor
No,
in New York.
in New York State.
Yeah.
There's a lot of these down around North Carolina, South Carolina, Kentucky, Tennessee, especially in the tobacco country. I used them a lot for that. But yeah, it's quite of a crude machine.
So that's the most unique of all your tractors then, right?
Probably yes.
Probably,
yes.
yeah.
And it's a little bugger to get on and off of.
Is it
It's
really?
really a tough thing to get on and off of.
All right, we're back to John Deere's.
Okay, this is a 1940 John Deere L. The smallest John Deere they ever made. You'll notice I go for the small tractors. It's a little two-cylinder. I believe it's around 10 horsepower. Some lawnmowers are more powerful than that. It's a 3-speed. It was made to replace a team of horses or a team of mules. And they tell stories of how a lot of the dealers would, to sell one of these, take in a team of horses or a team of mules and trade. There's a sheep farm right down the road from here. The man who had that farm years ago did his entire farming with one of these. Yeah, little John Deere L. And
Well, you get the gear ratios right, and you can get a lot of power out of 10 horses, you know.
so
Those tires weren't put on there day before yesterday either, by the looks of them.
oddly enough, they came with the tractor though.
Did they really? Isn't that beautiful?
This tractor belonged to a mechanic, lived in Wiggletown. And I knew the guy almost all my life. And I thought because he was a mechanic, the tractor would be in real good shape. Well, maybe he could make it run. But it had more Rube Goldberg devices on it than I finally had to give up and take them all off and start over again.
You know what? You were in farming for a long time, and you know that sometimes that was necessary. If you couldn't afford parts or get parts, you strung things together whatever way you needed to get the field done.
Oh, yes. Yeah. A lot of baling wire and nails instead of cotter keys and so forth.
I see they've still got the crank on the side. Did that crank come with it too?
Oh, yeah. This one has to be cranked. There's no starter.
Yeah.
There's no starter. It has to be cranked.
To the younger kids today, they have no idea what that would mean to crank a vehicle. But even when I was a kid, the old cars that I had cranks. They had starters on them, but half the time they didn't work. And a lot of times I'd crank it just for the fun of it, to show people that I could do it.
Sometimes this one will give you a little kickback, too.
Oh, yeah.
You have to be careful with it.
Easy to get a broken wrist.
I finally got it so it starts easy. It had the wrong carburetor on it. I didn't realize that. And if you look at this carburetor, which is right now on it, and the carburetor that was on it, it's very difficult to tell the difference in them. But I found out later he had a boat carburetor on here.
And you talk about Rube Goldberg. Whatever worked, that's what he put on there.
And same make and everything, but it was for a boat. And consequently, the thing did not run good. And but I've got it going pretty good there now.
Let's start. It's something we haven't mentioned, and I've noticed on most of these tractors you have real nice decals, and then most of them aren't original. Did you have to put new decals on? How do you get them?
There's any number of suppliers of
Are
these
there
decals.
really?
Yes. I order the John Deere decals from a guy named Jordy. His last name is Jordy. He is noted for probably having the best decals. Yes, they're also the most expensive, actually.
They're exact replica.
They're exact. he does a lot of research. He also sends you a paper to tell you exactly where they go to locate them and so forth. The man's done a lot of research. And
That's what really sets him
I met
off,
him
though,
at a
doesn't it?
show a
Oh,
few
did you?
years ago, yeah. And he's deep into the hobby himself. And a lot of these guys get in the hobby and then they find a need, so they make a business out of it. And
That makes sense.
yeah, those decals there on that Avery came from Saskatoon, Saskatchewan.
Come on.
Yeah.
They didn't come from Scioto at all, did they?
Yeah.
What a great day. We are on the property of Clarence Baker up here on the Lakeshore Road, Chazy, looking at his tractor collection and talking about his family history, and at the same time covering a lot of the history of the area, because the two are intertwined for generations and generations. Here's another familiar name, but I don't ever think I saw a tractor quite like this by Alice Chalmers.
Well, they were around. They made about 12,000 of them. This is an Alice Chalmers G. It's a 1948. Has the engine in the rear, and of course with the great vision up front, so you can see. It has a little 4-cylinder N62 Continental engine in it.
Look at the light. Look at the tail light. Oh my. I can't tell. It may be. Is it really? Not designed to be seen 4 miles away in the bright sunshine, I guarantee you that.
It has one tail light and one headlight.
Oh, it does? Well, that's all you need. Just to tell the deer and the bear to get out of the way. Oh, you also have a miniature of this one?
Yes, and that one too. You
Oh,
probably.
isn't that neat?
And see, that's how the plow mounted on these. They came with a plow. This tractor right here came with a full line of equipment. Most people think it's a cultivator, and yeah, this one is a cultivator. But I used one when I was a kid. Just before I went in the service, there was an estate down the road here that had one. They had a mowing machine for theirs. I mowed a lot of hay with it, mowed their orchard and everything with it. It had a mower, planters, tillers, a front end loader. Yeah, there's a lot of equipment that came with one.
Did you get the equipment, or did you just...
I just got the cultivators.
Okay.
I got this one down in Lunenburg, Massachusetts. And it had a New Hampshire, I bought it from a John Deere dealer, but it had a New Hampshire license plate on it, tractor license plate. And I understand, again, it was an old fellow who traded it in on a lawnmower again. And because he'd aged out of the truck garden business. And
Most of these 3-speed manual transmissions, right? Most of the old tractors.
yeah, let's see. Coming down the line, the Cub is a 3-speed, the John Deere's a 4-speed, Avery's 3-speed, that's a 3-speed. Yeah, this is a 3-speed.
Oh, that's a dandy. Are there very many of these around?
There's
Here?
a couple of others in the area. There's one up at Banker's Orchard.
Oh, yes, that's where I've seen one. Okay.
Uh,
I go by there every day.
now, Bruce and Nina Sullivan are very active members of our club.
What nice people they are.
And Nina's our secretary.
Is she really? I gotta say nice things about her, huh?
And what a worker. She can do more by accident than most people do on purpose. But,
Yeah, they're really special folks.
they have one there, but I don't believe it's theirs. There's a story that comes with it that tractor was in somebody's basement or something. And it's just there, but I don't believe it belongs to them. I'm not sure.
I have to track that down.
Yeah,
You never know, it could end up right here in this field. Who knows?
I'd love that. There's another one that used to belong to Shields vegetable stand on Route 22. And that one wound up on the Lawrence Castine farm. I understand finally Butch Donovan did a motor job on it, got it running. And the last I saw of it, it was back on Route 22, but closer to Plattsburgh. And I should have stopped that day to see it, but I was in a hurry. I said, I'll come back later, and it's never been out again.
But you know what? You're telling the world, or at least our little world, about these things here today. So I wouldn't be surprised a bit if you get response to some of your old buddies and people you've never met about some of these tractors.
Yeah, I hope I do.
And wouldn't it be good if you could fill in the last chapter on that Avery over there?
Oh, I'd love to. I'd love to know some history, because as you see, I know a little bit of history on most of these tractors, and I know none on that Avery. And it hit me last night as I was about to go to sleep. I ought to make a pitch to see if I can get some
We
information.
don't mind that kind of a pitch. We make little pitches every now and again ourselves. All right, another familiar name in the tractor business, Massey Harris. Canadian.
1949.
1949 pony.
Pony, yes. And again, I have the little replica of it also, the little toy.
Did you have to do body work on any of these? Were there some of the cowlings and stuff pretty well dented? Or?
Well, I guess so. Yeah, yeah. And when I reach the end of my capabilities, well, I go up and see Jody Barber, and he helps me a little bit. And
All right, what do we know about this one?
well, this one I also bought in Lunenburg, Massachusetts. Sight unseen. I went down and I bought that Alice Chalmers. The dealer down there was going to deliver it to me. He called me a couple days later and said, you know, I know where there's a beautiful Massey Harris pony. Would you want it?
Say, oh, as soon as I finish drooling, we'll try to make a deal.
And it came with the wheelhouse and the plow and a little dump rake and a snowplow.
Come on.
And projects that are still in process. So anyway, it needed paint really bad. It had one rim that was completely rusted out on it with a flat tire. But anyway, all in all, it was a good running little tractor. So I said, okay, how much? And we agreed on a deal. And of course, I saved some on trucking by buying two, splitting the cost between the two tractors. So up it came, and I've had it ever since. And again, I worked my way through it. Of my small tractors, from the Cub to the Avery to the L to the G to this one, they're all one plows. This is my favorite.
Really?
Yes.
Any special reason, or just you and that seem to get along together?
Just plain gutsy.
Isn't that amazing?
It's got a lot of power. It handles good. I don't know. It's comfortable. It's easy to get on and off of. There's a lot of things about it I just really like.
At my age, easy to get on and off of would be a big factor, I think. But
Yeah.
it is a neat little tractor.
And this motor here is the same motor that's in that Alice Chalmers.
Come on.
And the rear end on this tractor is the same rear end that's on that Avery.
And this is what year again?
1949.
1949.
Uh-huh.
You seem to like that time period, don't you?
Yeah. The 40s. Well, I remember it so well. I remember those years and people getting tractors, and I can even remember when Calvin's father got his tractor, because we had a connection to your mother and father through your Uncle Clarence Trombley and Aunt Anna, of course. My folks were very good friends with their folks, so if anything happened, we heard about what was happening to you folks too.
So we
And
can't
Uncle
tell.
Clarence bought a new tractor just about the same time, yes,
John Deere?
which I drove a good many hours, yes.
Well, you know, I tell the story about old Dave Hiltz down in Moira. Some of my friends viewing this in other counties will remember old Dave Hiltz, but he was the farmer that taught me all the lessons of hard work as a teenager growing up, and how to handle the very first hay bales when the balers came out, and how to turn over hay, and how to do lots of things. But I remember when he got his first tractor, very similar to one of the last tractors we're going to see in the road here.
Yeah.
And I've told this story before, but he had a team, and he'd never driven a tractor before. And the salesman came, brought it one day, and said, "Dave, try this." So he got it in the dooryard and headed out behind the barn. And first thing to go was the fence, the pasture fence. He knocked it right down. He got it in road gear, and he couldn't stop. And he swore a lot, this guy, and so we won't repeat all the expletives that came out of his mouth as I saw him going down through the pasture saying, "Whoa, whoa, you son of a... Whoa!" I don't remember how he got it stopped, because I was on the floor flopping around laughing so hard to watch him go. That was how he introduced the tractor and almost demolished it before he made a payment on it.
That really tickles me, because when we first got the John Deere, the original B John Deere, my dad put me to wheelharrow in the garden with it. The garden was next to the chicken coop. The chicken coop had a fence.
Here we go.
And I also found out whoa didn't work because I tore one of the posts right out. Yelling whoa all the time.
Oh,
To get back to this tractor for just a moment for the history, a guy that owned a sawmill owned that tractor. And the only thing he ever did with it was his garden. He had it to do his garden with. And so those are original tires. It's never really worked.
yeah. That makes a big difference because tractors do have to work pretty hard.
It had sat so long that the motor had set up. This guy's grandson had taken the motor apart and rebuilt it. And I guess, from what I understand, he did race cars and so forth. He did an excellent job on that motor. I know that.
So you didn't have to do that part of it when you got it.
I did very little to this thing mechanically, except the rear wheels. I had to get some new rims. I found those up in Malone. Guy was
Did you
parting one
really?
of these out, yeah. And I found that. A couple other pieces for it. So mainly this was a cosmetic job here.
Some people get old tractors and just put them in the field and don't get them running. And that's okay if that's what they enjoy.
Yeah.
But you like to see them
Yeah.
just as they were.
But the trouble is then I kind of get to like them and I don't want to get rid of them. And the barn keeps getting fuller and fuller and fuller of tractors.
I can understand that. You must have a pretty big barn. All right, let's turn around, do an about face, and talk about the case.
This is a 1945 Case VAI. The I
Get this. Wait a minute. Oh, I love it.
that stands, the I in there stands for industrial.
Yep.
There were a lot of Case VACs. They're still in use in a lot of places. But this was an industrial tractor. It was bought by a guy by the name of Sam Fleming down in Essex County. And he had a contract to mow the sides of the road. And this tractor originally had a mower on it. Unfortunately, his son-in-law sold the mower separate from the tractor. I would love to have it. But it mounted right here. This is where the pulley goes, or that system went there. I bought it from his son-in-law, who a lot of people know. He's a forest ranger, Wes Hurd.
Oh my! Come on.
Yeah. And
Anybody that doesn't know Wes Hurd.
he was using it just to rake hay with, and he had painted it once. He had really done a pretty good restoration job on it once, but he didn't have any place to keep it inside, so it faded right back out. And most cases were painted that flambeau red, which is really an orange. Within 2 or 3 years, even the new ones would fade right out. I went to a show in Denton, North Carolina, saw one of these, and the guy had done all the research, and he said they came out in red or yellow. So I decided I'd do the real industrial paint job on this. So I've got it painted pretty much to specs that the industrial tractor would have been painted like.
This one actually had most of its life right here in the North Country.
Don't tell anybody, but this is John Deere paint.
Is it? Oh, I love it.
Is that legal?
Yeah, I don't know if it's legal.
I don't know. Some people
I don't know if it
are
matters.
upset with that. I'm just noticing that
Somebody
hit something, huh?
Somebody either hit something or scraped something against it. Make your little mark. You're going to have to get out your can of paint.
Yeah, this is quite an old tractor. Now, I bought this tractor originally just to use. I just was going to use it as a beat-around tractor to go up in the woods with and all that. Well, I painted it. I still use it, but I don't really want to go in the woods with it.
Look how lovingly and tender you touched that scratch somebody put on it. I know you don't want to take this tractor up into the woods. Once again, did you have to replace the step here? Or?
No, I made that.
Did you really?
I made that out of another piece, a couple of pieces that were on there that didn't belong. And I made that so an old fella can get up there a little easier. There's going to be more of them. See, I've got one on the pony now.
Yep, I noticed that.
And there's going to be more of them with the steps before it's over. It's getting further and further up to the platform.
That's a nice tractor. I really like that
That's a
case.
handy old tractor, and the best thing I like about this is if I need a tow or something, my wife gets along very good with this
Oh,
tractor.
she does.
She gets along very
That
good
could
with
make
this
a
tractor.
difference.
Oh, yes.
Stuck
Oh,
out in
yeah.
the field somewhere. huh?
Yeah. My wife spent 25 years driving a school bus, but she had a little fear of tractors. I don't know quite why, but she likes that one. So
She's afraid to put a scratch on it after you've painted it. I don't know. All right, let's go over here.
Okay.
We're back in the John Deere business.
this is the original family John Deere tractor. That's a 1943B. Originally belonged to a farmer by the name of Cook that lives south of Plattsburgh, up around, if you know where Jim Carter built that big log home, right up in that area. And we got it in 1949 used. As I say, Bill Finney delivered it to the yard and never went back, except we had a few complaints on it and he fixed those. This one I think has been repainted about 4 times. And won't be too many more years before I have to do it again.
But I did some real work on this farm.
Oh yes, it worked. That tractor's worked very hard. It still doesn't burn any oil and it runs like a top.
Really?
Yeah. I'll start it for you.
This is the part I like. It takes you
I've never seen one of these started.
takes you back to your childhood, and when you hear the sound of a John Deere, it's absolutely unique. For you city folks, you're in for a real treat. This guy knows exactly what he's doing. It's going to fire. Doesn't even have to warm up, huh? Isn't that beautiful? And there's a reason why the John Deeres have that unique sound, isn't there?
Oh yeah, that 2-cylinder engine, 2-cylinder horizontal engine.
How heavy is that flywheel?
I don't know
Heavy
exactly.
enough to do the job.
Yeah. I think it'd be all you could do to lift it up there
Yeah.
and to put it on.
Did you do any rebuilding on this motor or not?
That motor, the last time it was touched was in 1954.
Come on.
Yeah.
46 years ago?
Other than that, the governor was rebuilt 2 or 3 years ago. The governor and the bearings and the fan shaft, which is all this unit and the fan shaft that goes down through. This thing does not like to die.
No, I can remember that about some of them. Just want to keep on running. I had a few cars like that. They used to do that when you park them in the driveway. Yeah, there you go. There's more than one way to do it, isn't there, huh? Stall it out.
Stall it out.
Yeah, drive it against the barn and let her go, huh?
The other two, I have a button on the magneto I can push.
Oh.
This one never had one. Maybe someday. Turn off the gas. But this thing will start like that, even if it's 40 below.
Will it really?
That thing gets us out of trouble a lot of times.
Ooh.
That will, yeah. Because that will tow the truck, which is stick shift, get the truck running, and then you can jump her off the battery and start a car.
You got a plan. Sounds like you've done that more than once.
And we keep this at the ready with chains on it in the front of the barn during the winter, because as we plow all these driveways around here, once in a while we make a mistake and get the truck stuck. And this is what we get it out with.
Oh, that's great. Boy, you got them all greased up here, don't you? Huh?
Yeah, that keeps them shiny.
Yeah.
This is the set of plows that I explained. They're either 1949, I think they're 1949 model plows. They were brand new when we got them. And they still work fine. And
Those old tires have been on there for a while, too.
this tire is original.
I think it is.
And I'm sure it is. And when Dad died, just before Dad died, and that was a few years ago, 23 years ago, he told me he'd never put air in that tire.
Think about that in terms of today's tires,
So
folks.
I've kept track of it, and I've never put air in that. So there's probably some environmentalist that would like to have the air out of that tire just to test.
Probably breathe that air and get drunker than a skunk.
Yeah.
We were.
That tire there I had to replace. Now why the tire on this side, that's the one that gets all mud and is in the furrow all the time.
Yeah.
This one doesn't, but this is the tire that rotted.
amazing.
That's a new tire.
Makes you wonder if that's real rubber in that left tire, or if that's some of that World War II.
And you can remember
kinda
that
stuff.
tread design. That's an old winter tread tire.
Oh gosh, I do remember that tread design very
Yes.
well.
I don't know what the make is.
I had knobby tires like that on an old 1946 Ford. All right, we took a little break. Well, we got another microphone and got cooking again, and Clarence and I told some wonderful stories while we're sitting on a picnic table by the lake, none of which you'll hear on this program, maybe in a special edition later, but we're back again. And we were talking about the new tire on the other side, BF Goodrich tire, right? Or is this the
This
BF
is
Goodrich?
the
This
BF
is the
Goodrich
BF Goodrich
tire on this side. That's never had any air put in it since 1949, I believe, is the last time it saw air.
Pretty good old tube in there, huh?
Must be. It is getting a little soft, though.
You know, that's something we haven't mentioned. Are any of these tires extra weight in them? They used to have extra weight in them.
Yes, and I take it out because it's very corrosive and it destroys the rims.
Well, let's talk about it, because non-farmers have no idea what we're even into here.
Well, they used to put calcium chloride in the tires to add extra weight for traction. And it helped a lot, I'm told. We never did it ourselves. But the tractors I get, because of the corrosive nature of the material, it'll eat out the rims after a while, and I just have it removed.
They're heavy enough without extra weight.
Oh yeah, they're heavy enough to handle anyway. So, seeing as how I'm not working the tractors that hard, I take it out.
Yeah, that's great. Well, that's kind of neat. Talk about something unique, that great old knobby tire like the ones I had on one of my old Fords that got us through the snowbanks. Now we're coming into an area that's very, very familiar to me, because this is almost identical to the first tractor that Dave Hiltz got. What year is this one?
This is a 1950 Ford 8N. It's not my tractor. It belongs to my neighbor and very good friend, Francis Bushy, or Fran Bushy as most people know him. He's the pool man. He works for Lake Champlain Pools. He's all over the county. He graduated from school with my oldest son, as a matter of fact, but we do a lot of things together because we share this hobby as a common interest. And when I knew that you folks were coming down, I asked Francis to bring several pieces of his finest stuff down so you could see some of his stuff too. He's a collector. He works on all kinds of stuff. He's working on a coot right now. I don't know if you even know what a coot is.
Not at all.
It's an amphibious four-wheel drive vehicle. It will hold 4 people. It's powered by a little, like, lawnmower engine with an automatic clutch, 3-speed transmission, and it has a propeller kit on it, so you can actually drive right into the water and keep right on going. And it's a thing that was left side of the road down here, not more than 3 miles from here, and it finally hit him one day that I'm going to try to get a hold of that thing, and that's what he's working on. And he's brought me a couple pieces to sandblast of the thing. And
Oh, you got the compressor and the sandblaster,
yeah,
huh?
I do. Yeah, this is a little tractor. If we get a chance to look at some pictures, I have a picture of where this came from, the barn it was in. And it would make a good story for a magazine, because he found this tractor just as it was parked. And he's gone right straight through it from stem to stern. And it's a great running little tractor. And he uses it a lot. He has several. And he just picked up this mowing machine from Gene Chauvet just a little while ago.
Oh, no kidding.
Stuck it on there, and he's trying that right now. And
These old fenders used to take a terrible beating.
Oh, yeah.
You wonder why that one looks a little gnarly? Well,
I think someday he plans on getting new ones, but for right now, what he did is got this thing running good, and little by little he modifies and fixes it up.
I like to see them in some ways original. Just you
yeah.
get an idea what they've been through
Really a nice old
over when
original
you
tractor.
when you start to think that it came off the assembly line 50 years ago.
And you can see right here where the battery was just left in it, and see where it really gouged the metal there.
Isn't that amazing?
Yeah, ate the battery box up. And I mean, it was just parked and left there, and he found it and got it and brought it home.
Some people like old cars, some people like old tractors, and some people like old cars and old tractors.
Yeah, that's true too.
All right, next.
This is a John Deere 110. It was a lawnmower. He doesn't have the mower deck on it right now, but I know he has it for it. He has more than one of these, but this is the one he just finished restoring. Runs like a top. It's really in great shape. And he's into lawnmowers a little bit. He has an Alice Chalmers and I think a Massey Ferguson and a Cub Cadet.
This one, how old is this one? Do you know?
This is a 1966.
Wow.
Yeah. 1966 John Deere.
I wonder how many of those are still cutting grass.
A lot of them.
Are they really?
Yes.
After all those years?
A lot of those tractors that are still going.
It's a tribute to how well they were built in the first place, I guess. They have Kohler engines, one of the most famous names in the world for engines for small equipment and mowers and snowmobiles. My first snowmobile had a Kohler engine in it.
Mm-hmm. Yes, they're a good motor. Very good. This has a unique thing. Well, the 110s had it. It's a variable drive. And although you can be in a specific gear, you've got a cone-shaped pulley. And this lever varies your belt up and down that cone-shaped pulley to change the ratio.
Isn't that amazing?
Now, last night I used this, or yesterday I used this to tow an engine from here up to there. And it was lugging just a little bit, so I just shoved that lever ahead and
Give you all the power you needed.
Like having a brand new motor under there.
That's
But
great.
he did a beautiful job in this one. And seeing as how I couldn't let him have all the fun, this is a 1966 wheel horse.
I should have known.
1056.
Yep.
Getting back to that old buddy of mine, the old POW, he used that tractor for 33 years.
Oh,
I bought that from him. He had it pretty well modified. He had an exhaust that stretched from here clear down to the rear wheel.
He did, really?
Yeah, and a few things. And after quite a bit of work, I've got it looking, I think, halfway decent.
That
It
was
also-
the same mower that was on it?
Yes. It'll cut grass anytime you want it to. I've pretty well rebuilt that. And it too has the same Kohler engine, really, just a little bit bigger than that one. That's an 8-horse, this is a 10-horse.
Oh.
I get a kick out of these, the unique way they start. The generator is also the starter.
That's pretty clever.
Yeah. And
That's a beautiful little tractor. Have you had that a long time? Or?
I bought that about 3 years ago. Whenever they had the last air show at the base. Because I remember coming home with that and watching the airplanes.
Well, that was about 3 years ago because we were there doing a show, weren't we, Calvin? Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. I went out there with my little grandson and took my little camera, which doesn't work very good anymore, and shot a few shots out there. That was 98, was it? Oh, boy.
98, so I've
A
had
couple
it
years ago
a couple
already.
years ago, yeah.
All right, we're walking. I've been looking at this. I passed this car a few times, all these cars, and now we're going to get the scoop.
Okay. This is my 1978 MGB Roadster. It's a North Carolina car. My nephew found it for me down in North Carolina. It has right now 63,000 miles on it.
Come on.
I've had it for, let me see, I got it in the spring of '93. And I've had it since then. We just have so much fun with it. I wanted an MG when I was a kid. We used to sit on the bank. We used to live on Route 9. We used to watch the old high wheel MGs go by.
Oh, yeah.
And then I was stationed in England for a while, as you know, and I loved them over there. Well, I figured 40 years was long enough to wait, so I finally bought one. And we just have more fun with this thing.
Have you done a lot of work on it or not?
It didn't need anything when I got it. It
No
was very
kidding.
well taken care of. I can document the mileage on the car back to day one. I know who the owners were. I've got the complete maintenance records on it. And
It's nice when you can do that, you know.
it had a lot of work done on it just before I got it. And I've had to do very little. I've changed the gas tank. It rusted from the inside rather than the
Oh, I've
outside.
seen that happen, sure.
And put a new pollution control pump on it. I put new carpeting in it, and this year I do something to it every year to try to keep it upgraded. Reupholstered the seats. And
Do you do that, or do you have somebody do it for you?
I had Mr. Kalman on Route 9 near Drew Brothers. He did the seats in this, and he did the seats in that horseless carriage right there. He does beautiful work.
Really, really nice work. I didn't know we had very many people around here that were capable of that kind of stuff.
Kalman escaped from Hungary during the revolution in '56.
Wow.
And he doesn't talk much about it, but I have gotten a few things out of him. He's an interesting person.
Yeah, that's a nice job in those seats. They sure do look original.
Yeah. Well, I was able to order the original skins and everything from an MG supply company. Again, you can order any part from this car. You can even order a complete body.
There aren't many things you can't buy if you're willing to scout around a little bit and pay the price, right?
Yeah, if you know where they're at.
And that's the beauty of the internet now, because you can discover things so much quicker than looking at catalogs and calling people on the phone. And
There's 3 companies that really provide everything for these cars still. Because I believe they sold more of these cars in the U.S. than they ever did any other place.
I think you're
especially
right.
these older, the newer models. Of course, they quit making them in '80, but
there are some MGs around, and I don't know if
there's quite a few of them.
I don't know if there's a club here in Clinton County. They got Corvette clubs and Mustang clubs and lots of other clubs. I've seen a few in parades, but
I haven't heard of a club, but you kind of get to know the other owners. They either stop by or they flag you down on the road or something. And but we have a lot of fun with that. It's a nice little car.
that's great. All right, what do we got? We got a
What's your complaint here?
oh yeah. Well, you had something you wanted to mention here.
I had this in the car show in Shazy Lions Club car show.
Calvin's laughing because he knew something was coming
Mr.
here.
Castine made the remark that someone should mount a mower deck on it and use it as a lawnmower. And I've never got back to him on that. But I've never really forgiven him for it either.
Let me look underneath and see what you. Oh no, I guess not.
We're not mounting a mower deck
No,
on
we're
it.
not going to put a mower deck on the MGB, huh? Oh, I like that. Now we got a horseless carriage here. This is.
Francis Bushes.
It's probably not original, is it?
No, that's certainly not. You come with a kit on these.
But it's a cute idea.
And there's a few of these around. I don't think there's a nicer.
Are you ready for this?
5-horse
5-horse what?
Briggs & Stratton engine.
Yep.
Coupled to a 3-speed lawnmower transmission. Chain drive to the wheels. Both wheels drive. It's kind of got a positrack. And the brake is simply a brake on the transmission.
Yep.
That's it there. And it's tiller steered.
Well, you know, they had tiller steering. It's got 1903 Oldsmobile on it.
Just to fool people.
Just to fool people, but you know, in 1903 there were horseless carriages,
It's very close.
and they looked fairly similar if you've looked at the old pictures with tiller steering.
And these kerosene lamps that actually work. When he brought it down here the night before last, he brought it down, it was really getting dark, and he had those lamps glowing across the backside. See the red ones.
So those lamps looked pretty cool last night coming down the
They
road.
look
huh?
really cute, really cute.
You
That's
said
a
there are
nice-
several of these around.
Yes, there are. Vern Bulrus in Altona has one that he just completed, and then there's several, well, 3 more people that come to the show. They each have one, and I don't really know who they are or anything. I never really even met the people, but they
You're
tool around with them and so forth.
right on the nervous edge here of thinking about it. Huh?
Oh, I've thought about it. But you can do just so much.
Maybe one of these years we get here. And
Could be. That with a lot of other ideas is stuck in my head.
I bet you've collected a few tools in your lifetime.
Yes.
Do you have any antique tools?
Well, when we get to the barn, we'll.
I knew there have to be a few more treasures here.
I also collect baseball caps, coffee cups, a few things.
My wife is going to say, Gordy, have you got a twin in Shazy? These collections of things of mine are legendary. I'll bring a new baseball caps in one door, and she'll be in a garage sale outside saying $1 a piece or 5 for free. All right, what do we got here?
This is a 1972 MGB, and it belongs to Francis Bushy. He had a Volkswagen, I'm not sure of the year, that he completely restored and drove for quite a few years. And one day, if I have the story correctly, he was at work and he looked out and he saw a guy sitting in his Volkswagen. So he
That would get your attention, I think.
out why he was there, and before it was over, the guy owned the Volkswagen, and Francis had traded for this car. This is a real neat little car too. It's all original, and it runs like a top. And he has a lot of fun and enjoyment out of this. In fact, they just took a trip up through the Notch, Smuggler's Notch, into Stowe, and down into Vermont. I'm not sure where their destination was. In fact, it was a 3-day trip, I believe, in this thing. So they're not afraid of it at all.
Not afraid to take it where it needs to go. That's right.
And they're quite a little car. This one is different from mine in that it's older. This is a chrome grille. They quit making those in 74. Well, after 74 and a half, they had a 74 and a half, and they came out with that rubber bumper. To me, this is a lot prettier than the last model. This also has an engine with twin carburetors, whereas to meet the pollution specs, they finally went to a single carburetor on the later ones and put a pollution pump on them, which robs you of horsepower.
Of course it does. We remember built back in the 50s.
That's why the belt to my pollution control pump is in the trunk.
Uh-oh. There you go. Okay. Sorry, Calvin. I was just trying to move around here so I wouldn't strangle you. That is an absolutely beautiful, beautiful car. And it's hard to believe that it's that old already.
I don't know much of the history on the car. I wish Francis could have come today. He's stuck working, so he was going to try to make it, but I guess he couldn't. So
we won't tell his boss that that's his view. He's stuck working.
I think the boss is gone. That's why he's stuck.
That's why he's stuck working? Oh, that makes perfect sense to me. So what are we going to mosey over to your place now? And
some gas engines over here.
Well, let's get ourselves across the street, and next time the camera opens up after this beautiful display of tractors over across the road at Clarence Baker's place on the Lakeshore Road in Chazy, we'll show you some gas engines and get the rest of the story. Just talking about the beautiful view from this side of the lake behind Clarence's house. Tremendous perspective. We had a little microphone problem. I think we've solved it now. This is a great spot. I don't think you could have chosen a better place to be born and live.
Didn't have much to do with that, but I'm glad I'm here.
Somebody chose it, and we're glad that they did. All right, first of all, I wanted to thank a gentleman by the name of Donald Rabideau up in Moores, who suggested that we do this program. Is he a guy you've known for a long time?
No, I met him this spring. He ran me down as I was driving a tractor down the road, and I was trying to politely get him by, and he wouldn't pass me.
That's the story.
That's the story. And we finally got to the Sheldon Lane, and I turned up the Sheldon Lane, and he did too, and I motioned him around again, and finally he came around, and then he stopped dead.
Right there.
Come to find out, he's very interested in old tractors. He looked the one I was driving over, the one I was driving that day. He looked that one over, and then promised to come back and see what was in the barn, and he did. And we became acquainted, and he's redoing an old Farmall F14 right now, I believe, and he's kind of getting into the hobby. So I was a bit surprised that he had suggested me also, but I'm glad that he did.
I think you may be perpetuating a great idea here with this program today. I hope some folks come forward with information about that Avery and about some other old tractors. Who knows what? Maybe we'll send you on a few wild goose chases before we get through with you.
Well, I found some pretty nice tractors that way, and also found some that, you're right, it's a wild goose chase.
You've made a lot of good friends. Now we're in a whole different ball game here. What do we got on this side of the road in your backyard?
This is a one-cylinder gas engine, 6 horsepower economy, which was a fairly well-known engine sold by Sears Roebuck, among other people. This particular engine belongs to Francis Bushy. It's a 1923 model, and it pumped water at the Loon Lake Lodge for years.
Come on!
Yes.
Oh,
And,
wow, what a great piece of history.
And again, we were off camera. I was thinking about starting it, but I'm not that familiar with it. I don't dare really try. But the thing will fire, and I have counted, it will sometimes turn 20 revolutions
Before it fires again?
before it fires again.
You think a John Deere sounds good? Oh, I love it.
Boom! And then it just will go around.
Got heavy flywheels here that just keep on going just by sheer inertia. And it pumped water at Loon Lake. That's a charming place for people who are unfamiliar with Loon Lake and the history of the lodge and the golf course and the restaurant up there. That's pretty neat country up that way too.
Oh yes, beautiful.
So where he got it up there, you think?
I'm sorry, I don't know the history of that. That's why I wish he could have been here today, because I'm not
We'll
quite
snag
sure.
him away when the boss gets back.
I know he bought one of his engines from Morris Broderick. I'm not sure if it was this one or not. And he's come by them different ways. He has several more, but this is definitely the nicest one he has.
Oh, they're decent, and dates back. That dates back 70 some years, huh? All right. Wow, this is amazing. We're talking about giant size here.
This is a 19 horse propane driven white Middleton made in 1893.
Oh man, you're doing it to me. This is wonderful. All right.
1/3/93.
It's stamped right on there, folks.
This engine was in a factory in New York City. I'm attempting to get the history on it right now. This belongs to our Gas Engine and Tractor Club. Get a little publicity. It was given to us. The guy even had it trucked up to Westport to give to us. And it sat in a fellow's yard, and as sometimes the way clubs go, everybody meant to do something with it, but it was just sitting there. This spring, they were discussing how they could carry it around, and Francis Bushy said, well, you know, I have a house trailer axle that I would donate with the springs and so forth. He says, and I would make a trailer if I had the steel. Well, our club president says, well, I've got some channel iron out of a meat packing
the way it
plant.
works, huh?
I had the jack and the hitch. So Francis made the trailer. Then he brought it over and suggested that maybe it should be sandblasted and painted.
Of course.
Well, I did. So then he put the base on it, which is just this green piece. And a couple days later, my son-in-law asked me what that thing was behind my barn. I didn't realize it was back. So I sandblasted and painted the base. Well, that looked pretty good. So then Francis and I made a trip one night down to right past Willsboro, where it was sitting. And we brought all the rest of the pieces home. I have pictures of this. And it came in milk crates and all kinds of stuff. And we didn't know where anything went, but I sandblasted and painted, and we finally got it together. It's not complete, but we know what we're missing now. We hope someday that we can get this thing running. I surely didn't even know what everything was on it, but come to find out it's a hot tube engine. I didn't know what that meant. It has no spark plug. Excuse me, I got to get over here.
Okay, I'm following you.
This thing is a little burner. And it has a tube in the center of it that goes down into the cylinder. And see, this is the way you adjust the burner in there. That tube heats up and gets red hot, and that's what ignites the gas. So you have to start this first. I never heard of one of these until we had it all together, and I said, I can't imagine what that is. The only way we figured out it fit there is by the pattern of the bolt holes. And the guy right away says, well, I can tell you what that is. That's a hot tube. So as we go along, we're gaining information. We just came by this piece a few days ago that fits there. Sooner or later, I hope someday this will be running.
But it turns over.
Oh yeah,
Cylinder
it tur-
turns.
We're missing the main cap to the connecting rod. The connecting rod is in there.
I can see it.
Yeah, but it turns. These are mighty heavy.
Yeah.
So, see, there's an old flyball governor over there.
Oh, my.
And
That's something you don't see every day or other day.
there's a problem with the head. We have to have that welded. We have some pretty good welders in the club. Maybe we can convince one of them to work on it. But it had to be put together by someone to develop an interest. So I spent quite a few hours on this spring, and Francis spent quite a few. But I was kind of happy doing it.
Boy, at your shows, this is going to be the
We had it at the
centerpiece.
fair this year, and we're thinking of putting some big sign from end to end with our club's name and the date of the show next year, and pulling this in parades because it's bound to get people's attention, and we need the publicity for our show. We just moved up here this year from Westport to the Clinton County Fairgrounds. We had more attendance this year than we've ever had before just by making the move. So it's very encouraging. Nice facility up here with modern bathrooms and a lot of things we didn't have at Westport. So we hope to make a go of it in Plattsburgh.
Gee, that's wonderful. I love that old engine, and I can't wait to see what happens with the history of it.
If there's anyone around, again, plug,
Knows
anything about a white Middleton, we'd sure love to hear from them. Or knows anything about gas engines or propane engines and would like to share it with us. We'd love to hear from them.
Sometimes it takes a little teamwork, doesn't it, huh? All right. Oh, there's a nice little engine.
Now this is a Fuller & Johnson engine. It's a Model N. They're mainly used on water pumps to pump water. I bought this from, I told you about my old friend who was the ex-POW. I bought this from his old buddy.
Wow.
The man last year when I bought it from him was 95 years old. He walked to the barn, from his house to the barn, as fast as I could walk. He was selling his collection just because he said, I'm getting too old for it. And I bought this engine and that engine from him, that wheelbarrow over there. And this year I was at the show at the fair, and he pulled up riding a lawnmower. Said, see, I see you got him going. I couldn't believe it. 96 years old and just as sharp as a tack.
Isn't that beautiful? And this engine runs?
Oh, yes. Probably I dare start this one for you. I hope it runs.
I bet it will. There's a process, huh?
Yeah.
Are the folks out there counting the turns before it fires each time? You gotta love it. Isn't that neat? It's one of the best sounds in the world, isn't it? Huh?
Yeah. And that's the way she goes. Yeah.
And it would probably run all day and all night and all day again. And
Just keep going. Burns very little gasoline. That's only a horse and a half.
yeah. Did you have to? Gee, that sounds like my bulldog when he snorts. You know it?
I didn't have to do anything to it.
Oh, you didn't?
Kind of cleaned it up a little bit, changed the gasoline in the tank. I took the tank off and cleaned it out.
It's a really nice carriage that somebody made for it over the years.
That was broken. I had to redo that. It was broken. The wheels were kind of
It's sagging a little bit.
sagging, so I fixed that.
Oh, that's a nice old motor. I love it. And this, I'm sure this is the charm. I hope that some of our viewers who have youngsters have never seen an engine like this, and perhaps a lot of adults have never seen an engine like this.
A lot of people look at these and they think they're water pumps. They don't understand that this was used to power a water pump or many other things on a farm before there was electricity.
Sure. And there were a lot of farms without electricity here in Clinton County until the 1940s as well, in case city people who had power in 1905 or 1908 or realize I worked on a lot of farms that had no electricity as a kid.
During World War II, we had electrical power in the house, but it was 1947 before we had power in the barn. Yes.
There was a national effort to bring electricity to the rural areas right during that exact time period.
I had the occasion to appear before a 4th grade class with 4 other guys I graduated from high school with, all the 4th grade classes in Shazy, and just tell them how it was when we were in 4th grade this past spring. And when we got to know electricity, it was just amazing. Those kids said, "Then what'd you do for TV?" We didn't
make your computer work.
And, they asked more questions, and you could tell they really felt bad for us. You know.
Well, they can't imagine what life was like before computers, never mind television. And I can remember very well the first television set we ever got. I can remember that it was a FADA, F-A-D-A. And I bet you maybe 1 out of 200 of our viewers ever even heard that name before. But it's true. We were a little bit behind in some things here in the North Country compared to other areas. Things like indoor plumbing and, you know.
Grew up with an outhouse, know what one is.
Sure. What's this?
This is another economy engine. They make is that big one over here. It's a Model JK. It runs on kerosene and gasoline. Starts on gasoline. That's this little tank here. And you get it started on gasoline, and then you turn this one down to turn off the gas as you turn up the kerosene. And the big tank on it's for kerosene. I have gasoline in it. But it's another little 1.5-horse engine. It's governed. It doesn't hit and miss like this one. It just pump, 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 pump constantly.
What's the point of having the combination fuels?
At one time, kerosene was cheaper. Those 2 John Deere tractors, those 2 John Deere Bs I showed you, both were made to burn kerosene.
No kidding.
There's 2 gas tanks on, 2 fuel tanks. A small fuel tank to start it on gas, and then a larger fuel tank to run it on kerosene. And we, in fact, ran it on kerosene at times, yes. Because there was a few cents difference in the price, and it made a big difference back then. But this is one of my winter projects here. If you come back next spring, that'll be a nice red with new decals and so forth.
But it probably still runs, doesn't it?
Oh, yeah, it runs. Yeah, it'll run. If I had the arms for it, I'd start that one. But
oh, you proved that everything works. You don't have to worry about that. We're sold.
These 3 things I found out back.
Did you really?
And recognize this as my grandfather Baker's Brazier Falls plow.
Come on.
Brazier Falls 35. I can remember him saying that over and over again.
Do you mean the Brazier Falls in Franklin County that I know and love from my childhood?
I did a tracing. There's some foundry information on here, and I did a tracing of it. I don't know where it is right at the moment. I know it's in my garage somewhere, but there's some information about what foundry and so forth. But it does say Brazier Falls.
In the field for all those years.
Mm-hmm. I can remember my dad plowing with that, and of course the handles were rotted and so forth. So I sent to Nebraska.
Oh, you didn't make them. You sent for them.
I sent for those, and I sent clear to Nebraska. There's a guy who seems to have the market cornered on those. I've talked to him and his wife. They're some of the nicest people. They're plain old Nebraska folks. And, well, what are you going to put them on, he'll say. And he tried to get you the right ones and so forth. That cultivator, there were 2 of them up there. And I took the 2 and made one. And realized as I was doing it, one belonged to my grandfather Baker and one belonged to my grandfather Brunel. So I have a combination of a cultivator that parts from both. And then that horse hoe, as we called it, killer, whatever you want to call it, that was my grandfather Brunel's. So I drug them down here, sandblasted them, and painted them. And if I don't paint them soon again, I'm going to have a problem.
And it's really neat to recover the past that way, because every now and again you will see old equipment out in the fields that has just been left there through about the last 2 or 3 generations, you know.
I have quite a bit of stuff up in the field. I have some horse-drawn equipment that I'm yet to fix up other projects, you know.
What a great thing to do after you retire from your regular jobs and get back into stuff. Oh boy, look at the wonderful old tools and things.
Now, as soon as I retired, this was my first project. We went into the woods and we cut the lumber. Up in my woods up here, we cut the pine out, and this is about my first attempt at ever building anything, but I got it up anyway.
It's really neat. Oh, I'm looking at things that bring back memories: milk cans, kerosene stoves, ancient radios.
Hat box. Here's the book bag I used to carry to school.
Come on.
My mother just found that the other day and gave it to me.
You know, I hate to say it, but I got one just like it. I think we're tracking pretty good together. Oh, boy. The American Overseas Radio, which was shortwave, probably got 4 or 5 bands on it, for those people who remember.
The last use of this was in the fishing shanty. We used that in the fishing shanty. My dad did. I did too.
Warmed myself to the glow of those things so many times when I've written in my columns and told my grandchildren and great-grandchildren about the pattern they used to make on the ceiling. And my mother would like that.
Oh, yes.
In the upstairs bedroom, and we'd all get under 15 quilts on the feather bed on the floor. Oh,
That was one of our milk cans, because that was our number,
how
153.
many times have you emptied those babies?
Oh.
How many times, huh? That's where I got my first mussels.
This is a little cream separator my mother and father bought in 1939. It is complete. It's free. I even have the instructions for it.
Ward's Royal Blue Junior Cream Separator. Isn't that great?
And of course, they were all. You have to get them rolling.
Oh, yeah. You hear it? And you hear it go?
Yeah.
Wonderful old bottles. The old Bayview and Plattsburgh Dairy.
Plattsburgh Dairy.
7-Up bottle in the back.
Yeah. And I have a few bottles up there. I have some more stuff in that pail I haven't put up yet. This was my grandma's pancake griddle that she used to put on the stove. And just some different stuff I've seen here and there. People have started to give me stuff now to put up in my barn.
You've got a collection of church keys, too. Out in my barn with a string, with a wire hanging on a hook, are about 50 of those old church keys. They're probably worth $0.25 a piece. And some brands of beer that don't even exist anymore. I'm just reading in the paper today about what's going to happen to Genesee. I know what those are, too, buddy boy.
Well,
you think I didn't?
Do you know what they are?
Calvin knows what they are,
Yeah.
too.
You know, a lot of people don't have any idea.
Before they had chain guards on bicycles, even though maybe one of my Schwinns did, a lot of them didn't. And boy, when you were going down a hill about 77 miles an hour, pumping for all you're worth, and your pants leg got caught in that chain, you were in big trouble. So what you do is fold the pant leg around your right leg, put that clip on it, and that kept it from getting in the chain. And boy, I don't think...
You had a Schwinn also, huh?
Oh, God, did I have a Schwinn? Yep.
So did I. Bought it down at Marshall's.
Did you? At Marshall's, I got a couple of photographs which I let Richard Frost borrow for a book on the history of Plattsburgh commissioned by the city, with some pictures of the window of Marshall's. Calvin's seen them, with Babe Ruth's photograph in there, and some of the old baseball gloves, and the reflection of Wolf's store. Oh, look at that old single shot 22.
My grandpa's. No, that's not a 22.
Not
410.
a 410.
Yeah, 400. And
That's beautiful.
you see that little wooden boat up there?
Yep.
That was my boat when I was a kid. My uncle whittled that.
Come on.
And yeah, I played with that. And I do have Prince Albert in the can also.
Prince Albert in the can, let him out. How many times did we make that phone call till everybody knew what it was all about? We thought that was the biggest joke in the world. You got some old knee-high and Mission soda soft drink bottles, some great old bottles. Did you dig them up around here? Somebody
Dug them up around here, and just the other day, grandkids carried this out of the lake.
Come on.
Yeah.
What does it say?
Yeah, I think it's a rum bottle. says federal law prohibits the reuse.
It may not be. It's got a twist top on it.
No. I don't know what it is.
It's got a neat looking thing anyway.
I can't really read what it says on the bottom.
These eyes are going to be able to print that size. I barely made it up the driveway with these trifocal glasses on.
I throw it in the pail, and after a while I come out here.
We got old hammers. We got a couple really old hammers, and we got a draw shave, which somebody sharpened up a little bit, and we got a spinner for cars, and some tools people just have never seen before. And some of these old hammers, and I've got a few of these C-clamps. Those are getting pretty long in the tooth. Those old C-clamps like that, they're far different today.
Remember the old telephones?
Oh, how well I...
Take them apart, take the magnets.
Oh, yes, we did, didn't we, huh?
That cow is off the weather vane of the barn that used to be out back, the cow barn. And the horse barn had a horse on it, but I don't know whatever happened to that.
Looks like somebody shot a hole or two in that weather vane.
Yeah, and it could have been me.
You think so, huh?
And that's the old U.S. Cavalry bridle.
Is it really?
Yeah, I don't know what it was doing around here. But most of that stuff was just picked up just right around here.
I love the old size and hand sized and
Sickles
in size and
this thing here, person brought me,
I got one identical to it.
and I don't know what it is.
You know, nobody ever told me what they used it for, but it was, I don't know if it was used for barking logs. I can't remember what they said it was for.
One person told me that he thought they used it when they were stripping the limbs off of cedar trees to make cedar oil.
Now, you could be right there. That sounds way more plausible.
Play at the fair, Steve Flanagan told me they have one there. He thought it was some kind of a brush cutter, but I don't have a definitive answer. But it's a good conversation.
Again, our friends and neighbors who are watching our little corner help us to get educated. Some of the old shovels that are great.
The thing about those, see the wooden handles.
Yep.
The shovels aren't unique at all. It's just the handles.
And I don't know if anybody knows what flails are either.
Yeah. My grandfather used to thrash his pea beans with those. Yeah.
Isn't that great? And this is a great old hammer here. That's long before you ever came on this earth. That baby was made.
I'm sure. Yeah.
Pulleys,
Yeah.
ice tongs.
Ice
Aren't they
tongs.
great?
Ice saw.
Ice saw.
Yeah.
I got a couple old hay saws hanging up in
Hay
my
knives,
river
yeah.
root. Yeah, hay
Yeah.
knives.
And that's a one-man crosscut saw there
Yeah.
for wood. That's another thing that somebody brought me and gave me.
A ladle. You got some great old door
Yeah.
fixtures.
That ladle, as you call it, that's a skimmer
Skimmer. Yep.
for your hole when you're ice fishing.
And the flexible flyer, which
Yeah.
is one of my fondest memories.
That's my old flexible flyer.
Is it yours?
Yes.
I can remember the first one I ever had also. It was the best present we ever got. Was a used flexible flyer. The one they had several different sizes.
Yeah, that's my old sled. I don't know quite how old I was when I got that.
Kept it in pretty good shape. It must be you didn't hit too many tree stumps with it.
No, fortunately where I was there weren't many. So. Got an old wash tub. Got the washboards to go with it over there.
Oh yeah. Oh boy. You got the neat stuff in here and all.
That milk case up there is from the Merkel Dairy.
Oh, it is?
Yeah. That tea chest there is all tin lined, and my mother's family used to use that as the picnic basket. Yeah. Put ice
No
in
idea
it.
how old it is though, do
No
you?
idea. No idea.
They were-
And then that's my dad's toolbox, hard hat, and lunchbox. I kind of had to put that up there.
Gotta maintain the family connections, don't you, huh?
But I guess that's it for.
You got pieces of things and projects underway, and well, what do we got here? We got.
I got a few pictures.
Oh, I should have known. Let's you and me sit down, and Calvin over our shoulders, and
I don't want to bore you with too many.
oh man, I think you know better than to think I'm bored by this stuff, because this is a great way to learn about your history and the history of the North Country. And
This is, I said Francis had a vote.
I'll start move it over here so the camera can get to it, and just show us whatever you want to, and
This is that Volkswagen that Francis had that I mentioned that he traded for the MG.
Oh, yeah.
And that was a real sharp car.
You go to a lot of shows?
Yes. I go to a lot of shows. Sometimes we travel quite some distance. You know, as I mentioned, the show in Denton, North Carolina. Fortunately, we have a niece and my wife's sister and our brother-in-law live right there. This is how Francis Bushy, found his Ford tractor. If Calvin can get that.
It's camouflaged so well, but that's where it was, huh?
Isn't that something?
Isn't that amazing?
Have you got it, Calvin?
That's great.
Okay. So I thought that was kind of a unique picture that you should see. Now this was at Westport. That happens to, I didn't realize until I was looking at, that's me on my case. There's Francis pulling the club wagon around the show. This was at Pitlax. This is Earl Brandt, who's another active member of our club, on a 1935 Case RC, cutting corn.
Oh,
This is Francis pulling out this old International, the owner of which I won't mention, because I'm sure he was ashamed to be pulled out by a Ford.
I love it. So you got a lot of before and after pictures too, don't you, on all your tractors?
Francis's album, I'm not too familiar with it. I'll just,
Made sure he put a blue ribbon in there.
you know, that's one thing about our shows, though. There's no prizes. It's thought in this hobby that it would ruin it to have best of show and so forth, because that gets a little ridiculous.
For you, every item is a prize.
This is that's a Cub Cadet that had this kit was sold,
Yeah, I remember those.
and the guy in Altona owns that. They're quite active in our club also. I'm not going to show you each and every picture. I told you Francis is a gadget maker. Look at the dump trailer he made.
Oh, that's really neat. I like that.
I don't know
That's a pretty handy rig. Just gonna look at that. Yeah.
if it hooks to the hydraulics on his tractor, and he can pull up with a load of wood and just flat dump it. And this is an old 1020 that Francis had for quite a while.
Oh my.
Yeah. He got it out of Vermont, and eventually it went back to Vermont.
Oh, we did? You don't see them very long. You remember the old iron wheels on them?
I had the chance to buy one of those last fall.
See a lot around, but you don't see it.
Very rarely see them anymore at all, is right.
Let's see. This is 2 farmhouse that Francis had at one time also.
You said you don't. Do you buy and sell your tractors, or do you
No, I don't. I
kind of collect them? And
kind of fall in love with them once I got
I
them.
can understand that. That's why I used to have so many cars in the yard. You know, you hate to get rid of that old car, even though it hasn't run in 10 years.
And this is an old dump truck that Francis found in his travels. Now this is something we do at our show. This is an egg cracking contest. You start 10 feet forward. You have to back up, and you're timed. Back up and crack the egg, but not break it. And we got a guy in our club that did it in 8 seconds.
Really? And that's something I never heard of before.
Calvin must know that guy. That's Timmy Lincourt. You must know Timmy Lincourt. Okay. Well, I know there's nothing else in here.
Neat stuff, though, huh?
I really should go. There's only one thing I want to show you in here, and I don't know how well you can pick it up. Oh, there's probably some. There's that old John Deere B. Years ago when we were still hauling loose hay. And that's me. I was probably about 13 or 14 driving the tractor.
Yeah, that was that.
Here we go. This is the picture I really want you to see. This is that old 36 when I brought it home. I don't know if you can get that from there, Calvin. You'll notice I was proud as punch of having it. All 3 flat tires, and the only tire that stayed up was that one. We towed it home from Tony Tremblay's. They were unloaded there. Did you get it, Calvin?
Yeah. Okay. There's a good-looking guy in the back on the seat.
See, that's my son, Jim. I don't know if you know him or not. You must. There's the Cub when I bought it. As you can see, that wasn't in bad shape.
Boy, that's great.
No, there's nothing. No. There's my John Deere L when I got it. You asked if they were beat up at all when I got them. That kind of answers it.
No wonder it becomes a labor of love, huh?
And there's that case when I first got it. It was supposed to be orange, but it had faded out to kind of a yellow. And I guess that's all I wanted to show you in here. But
Great pictures, great memories. And you've been doing this with the old tractors for how long now?
first one I did was in '89. And I think I bought that 36, yeah, in '89. That was the second go. I did the 43 early, and then I bought that 36, and I think I worked on that for the next 3 years. But in the meantime, I was buying them. I bought several others, and yeah.
Have you got your eye? What do you got your eye on these days? Anything that we can scoop the rest of the media with here?
If I could find a good Alice Chalmers B, a good Ford 8N, two things I desire. A late styled John Deere B like Calvin's father has would probably be the next 2 or 3 tractors I'd like to own. And there's reasons for that. I had a Ford 8N that I sold. I bought it with the intention of restoring it, but then after I looked it over, it was just a little too rough to restore. And I've learned in the process, you know, not to bite off more than you can chew. Sometimes it's better just to start with another tractor. So I sold that one. It was a good running old tractor, but nothing to restore. So that's kind of what I'm looking for, as those 3.
I'm very anxious to see what kind of reaction we're going to get to this show. There are a lot of people who are farmers, who were farmers, who like farms, and who love tractors. And everybody likes motors anyway, don't they? Everybody likes motors, especially men.
The older people seem to. But I'm surprised at the reaction of the kids at our show. A lot of them seem to really enjoy it. And something I really enjoy doing is, if I'm with my tractors, of course, a lot of people don't want people to sit on them or anything. And here comes a dad towing a couple little kids, especially little boys. And they'll be looking, I want to get on it, Daddy. I want to get on it. When they get to mine, I said, you'll put them right up on there and take their picture.
Of course, that's what it's all about.
Just love it. I did get stuck at the show this year. I took a little fellow up on my lap and gave him a ride. And I couldn't get rid of him.
I didn't want to go home. You almost had another grandson, huh?
No, I want to stay. But
Yeah, the kids do love it. Calvin's son Caleb goes with us every once in a while. We took him on a long trek up and down the trails of Ausable Chasm, and I wasn't sure he was going to say he liked it when we got through, but he said, yeah, he had a good time, and it's kind of fun to reintroduce the kids to the things we did. And I find that more and more youngsters are interested in the way things were, and that's good. You got to pull them back away. You know, I was talking with a good friend of mine who was in the Navy during the Second World War, and we're talking about that terrible Russian submarine disaster and how things were and how he never could have survived. He didn't think submarines, but he was in some pretty heavy action on the big boats, destroyers and so on, and how, when you think about it, our kids have almost no way of relating to World War II, which was very much a reality when you and I were young kids. And without your stories, reading it in a book is not quite the same.
As a matter of fact, I'm reading Tom Brokaw's book right
Are
now.
you really?
Yes, enjoying it very much.
He's an amazing guy in so many ways, and he didn't survive in his business by being a dummy by any stretch of the imagination. And that book really proves it, doesn't it?
Yes, it does. I'm also very anxious for the next club meeting, or whenever I see two members of our club who are retired Navy submariners. And I'm good friends with both of them. I would love to hear their reaction to this sub-disaster.
I'm sure it was horrible because most of those guys have heard a story from their contemporaries about subs that went down. And the persistent story is when that happens, chances are you're not coming back up again. And we saw some stories a few days ago on television by a couple of guys who were saved from a sub where many people drowned and it flooded after they got them out. And believe me, the most fascinating part of all of that to me is 50-some years ago, and those memories are just as fresh today. You talk to anybody. Well, when you and I are talking about today, I mean, I had at least 20,000 flashbacks to my childhood, and it was just as if it just happened this morning.
Yeah, that's for sure.
I get the reality check when I look in the mirror every morning and realize that I'm not 17.
Who's that guy?
But memories are wonderful things, and by doing programs such as this with people like you who are articulate and passionate about what you do, helps to refresh those memories and renew those memories, and it's called reliving history, and it's good to keep it.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun. It's a lot of fun. It's a lot of fun to go to the shows. I would encourage everybody to come to one of our shows. We're usually, I don't know if this year if it's going to be the first or second week of July. It'll be at the fairgrounds in Clinton County. I think it costs $2 to get in, $2 or $3. There's a lot to see. There's a lot to do while you're there. We have games, as I showed you, the egg cracking contest. We have a little kids tractor that they pedal. They put a little sled, for a tractor pull. We have one for the big boys also. We do many different things there. We parade the tractors. And then the displays are just fantastic. You don't know what you're going to see next. People drag everything in there. And it's just a lot of fun, and I think a lot of nice people. So I would encourage people to come to our show.
I think it's a great way to meet new people and maybe renew old friendships. The thing I like about these people is they try to maintain the family history. Try to track these things down. It's not enough just to own something old. You want to find out what happened to it, who owned it, where and when.
Yes, I've got a story with almost everything I own, and if I don't, I'd like to find out.
And a lot of the things you own are connected with your family history. And isn't it comforting to have not only your family around you, but the things that the people who are now deceased used 60, 70, 80, 90 years ago?
Oh, it's great. It's just great. And I don't have any more to say about it.
The fact is, this has been an extreme pleasure for me. If you can't tell that these programs are a kick for Calvin and me, you're way off base, because I don't fake this enthusiasm. I'm just so excited to meet people like you again, having known you in another life, if you will, in the Air Force and then working for the county. For those people who thought that Clarence Baker was retired and had a rocking chair that he just oiled every third day so it didn't squeak, you can't be farther wrong. He's a very vital part of this community and still going full steam up here on the Lake Shore Road.
Going a little slower, but still trying to keep up the full steam.
As long as he can manufacture steps to get up on those tractors, things are going to be all right. Now all you need is one on the side of your bed and you're all set, right?
Yeah, because I just had to elevate my bed.
Oh, boy, here we go. Clarence, thanks again for inviting us up here today on this last day of August 2000. It's been a big kick for me. Maybe next year or so we'll come back and see what else you've done.
Good. You was more than welcome.
And he's also given us some delightful names that we're going to check out for programs in the future. Again, it's been a wonderful day for Calvin and me on our little corner. I don't know where we'll go next time. Half the fun is Calvin calling me up and say, Gordy, we're going to Shazy, or wherever it might be. Who knows where we're going to be next time for our little corner.